Okay, so what have we gotten today? I think I'm going to just run the app and show you what you can expect. All right, I have a simple route at the root that just returns a greeting message and adds a header to the response, and I also have a users ID and assets route that basically returns a user with his assets. You can see an iPhone, warehouse, Tesla, and stuff. And I also have a detailed assets that's going to return not only the asset here, but also the category and the tags that the asset has. For example, you can see you have the same user assets here and the category and the tags. That's why I call it a detailed assets, because you have more information about the asset. If you paid attention here, the asset is returned, only the ID and the name are sent back. And here, you have the ID, the name, description, and stuff. I'm mentioning this because of something I'll tell you in the future here in a second. So yeah, but that's basically it. Nothing too. Yeah, it's just the basics. All right, so we had. This is basically what you saw. That route in the beginning, the simple one, and here is where we have the users and stuff. We're going to get into that in a second. Before that, let's just take a quick look at the entities. We have a user, has many assets. An asset belongs to a user. It has exactly one category, and here, the category has many assets in a sense that one category can be in many assets. That's actually what I meant here. And we have also a many-to-many relationship between asset and tags. Like an asset has many tags, and a tag can be many assets. So that's basically, and we map that many-to-many relationship in this table here, asset tag. I don't want to get into like SQL or schemata stuff. It's basically what you'd find in a user entity category. You just have ID, name, created ad and stuff. An asset, we have the user to which that asset belongs. Yeah, actually, yeah, like the owner. The person that owns that asset, and this is the tag table, and this is the many-to-many bridging, junction, mapping, whatever you guys call it, the table that we have in standard SQL whenever we want to create a many-to-many relationship. All right, and here, this is important because we use Drizzle's new relations API. For example, I say that a user has many assets. This is where I create that relation. And here I say that an asset has a category, and an asset can have many tags, basically. This is because when you are querying the database, you can do I want a user with assets. And then assets can have category and tags. So you can say I want a user with assets, and the assets, I want them to bring in the category and the tags. So that's the detailed assets endpoint that we saw in the beginning, basically. All right, and then the rest is just we create the Drizzle client here, and oh, this is what I meant. I want the user with assets, and I don't know. Oh, I know. It's because I removed. I commented the category from the assets, but it's working. All right, so we have that. What else? And here we get the inferred type from the user table. Here you can see that's the type for the user role. And we also get, or we also do a mapping here, because, for example, when you get a user, it has ID, email, created ad, and stuff. Sometimes you don't want to return that back to the client. Sometimes you just want to return a public client. I don't know, just the name, or name and email, depending on your use case. But you get the point. Sometimes you want to refine, to remap the role. You want to remap this role to just return, I don't know, name and ID, whatever, or maybe change date to string, this kind of stuff, or rename stuff, That's where that's why we have this DTO or API type, this kind of stuff. And we do the mapping here. For example, we get a row. This is the row with everything that the database returns, and we return a select. I called it select user, but you could do public user or whatever, And here return everything, but you see how you could like rename this here. You could omit this stuff, and you get the drill. We do the same to asset. We get the type from the database. We do some mapping here, ID and stuff, and do the mapping here. For example, when you get the asset row, we do some mapping here and return a select asset. Again, you could call it a public asset, whatever, And if you take a look here, that's an example where we, for example, just return two properties from the asset. Here we return everything, like basically everything, and here we just return an ID and a name. So we got everything from the database, from the repo, but the service returns just like select data. And if you take a look at this here, for example, I return a user role. I return everything the database gives to me. I return everything. And the service is responsible for getting that role here. And then if it's a valid role, because it could be undefined, we, for example, here, we map that to the DTO, So that's basically the linking here. And here I have like two, get user by ID and get user throw, in case it's undefined, So we throw a domain not found error. I don't want to get into that, but yeah, you can kind of create like a custom error classes and then do this kind of stuff. So and then you do the same thing. You map to, because here you are sure that this row is valid, because if it wasn't, then you'd have thrown an error. Okay, And here we just do the mapping and return the remapped user data back to the client. And for example, if this error is thrown, for example, you catch it here. This I was just like debugging stuff, like trying to see what you get in this error stuff. But for example, this is where you could you'd be sent to. For example, when you get an error and it's from this class here, from this type, then you send some message and a code. And actually, I don't need this anymore because I understood how this error works. You kind of need to refine the error, and then you can access some properties here. Because if you do here, before you refine the code or the error, then TypeScript's going to say, look, maybe you don't have this all here. Maybe you don't have this message. So that's the reasoning. All right, so we also have some models here. I say, look, if you return, I don't know, 500, that's going to be in this shape. If it's 404, it's going to be in this shape, and so on. These errors you can define here in the models. Where do I have this here? You can say, look, you use this model from Elysia, a sort of reference, and you say, look, for this error, I want it to be a message and a code. For validation, I want it to have a message, a code, and some optional stuff, for example, path or a summary. If it's internal, yeah, you get the drill. You just kind of define exactly what you want to return from the controller in case something happens, and then you can catch them here. In this case, for example, whatever, and then when you return this here, the shape of the object has to match what you defined here, basically. Okay, here you see a message and a code, and that's exactly what we said we'd return in case of a not found, a message and a code. So you get the drill. Apart from that, what else do we have? We have a user interface called user REPL that has two abstract methods. This one here. This one gets that's the simple assets, and this is for the detailed assets endpoint. The Postgres user REPL implements or extends that interface and so on, and this is some like queries that I prepared here, and by the way, this is where you can see the relations, the Drizzle relations working. Here, for example, I say, look, I want a user with the assets. This is for the simple endpoint, and this is the detailed endpoint. You say, look, I want a user with assets, and the assets, please bring in the category and the tags. And here is where you do, look, I just want the user that has the ID that you pass here. And also something interesting that I did here. The service gets a REPL passed in, some sort of dependency injection. And the REPL, if you take a look at this here, the REPL gets the database. I do that composition here, context. For example, I create those instances, and I say, look, the service, the user service gets the repo, and the repo is composed with the database that we got. Yeah, the database here, this one here. So you kind of set up the here. You kind of set up the repo and the service, and then you bring that service decomposed. It's like ready. You bring that service into the context. You give it a name, user service, the value for that property or whatever you want to call it is this here, which is our like fully functional service. And you make it global because, again, you want to be able, we need the controller to be able to bring, to pull in the service. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. It would work if you did scoped. That would work too. But if you leave without this here, then you're going to get an error because the controller, will it? Oh, it will, because it's a decorate, not a derive or resolve. Something that I just I had a something else in my mind, a derive and resolve. For those cases, you need to use this here, because otherwise the controller wouldn't be able to see the service here. But you do stuff and you learn stuff. So here we use the models for the user and for the errors. Here is where we set that guard to say, look, the ID that you get from the client, it needs to be in this format here. If it's not, then I'm not going to talk to the database if that ID isn't in the right format. So that's why you do that. Again, here you use some models for the response. For example, the 200 response is, where do I have it? User models, I guess. Here, select. If I'm going to return a 200 response starters, then it need to be in this shape here. This select user or public user, whatever you want to call it. And then if I return a 200 for this route, then it needs to be in this shape. And if I return a 200 from this route here, it needs to be in this shape. You get the drill. Again, this is a nice feature from Elysia. I like it because it's you can type basically everything: the params, the error, the response, the query params, the body and stuff. Again, you get the service from the context that you put here. You put the user service into the context. You pull it in. You get a param from the route, a path param, and then you call the service get user with assets or throw, and you pass the ID that you got, and that's basically it. Okay. I want to. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are interested in this, because if you were, I also do a seeding with some mock data here. So, yeah, this was AI did that to me actually, because I said, look, this is my shape, this is my shape, this is my SQL stuff. Just get me some mock data. Yeah. Oh shit, that's a lot already. Okay. Yeah, that's it. I was just gonna say that I'm trying to create a guide, and maybe if you folks are interested in it, then I'll kind of detail the process. Otherwise, the two things I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring in auth. I don't know if better-auth or JWT. I don't know. I'll think of something. And then, yeah, so authentication. And then I'll try to use Elysia's static plugin to create a simple front end, so we can see stuff like nicely. The thing is, they support React, you know, like, but I don't like React, but I think I'll have to do something in React so we can get some front end set up. But if you'd like to see that, the app working with authentication and a front end, then just let me know and I'll try to come up with something. As I said before, this is just me learning. So this, yeah. But again, I've learned a lot during this year. So yeah, but that's it. So thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.